by the logic back then. Your dick won't work, nothing will work if you don't have 500 tests, because you just need it. And don't fucking ask questions because we're veterans of the forum and you're a little piece of shit kid who doesn't know shit. So take your 500 test and shut the fuck up. What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today, as promised from my last video, I'm going to be now talking about my worst cycle experiences. So, I have a few. It's not like I have, like the article was about your worst cycle, like just the number one. And I don't think I can narrow it down to one. And I guess some of these, I don't know how bad you would consider them. Like I would consider some pretty bad. Like it put me in some pretty, fucked up scenarios. Honestly, I might miss some too, because I've had some shitty ones. But, you know, like notably, one of the first ones that was really dumb was the classic test cycle. You know, you have your 500 mgs of test as your base, which is, you know, commonly assumed to be the only, this is like, back in the day, this was like ground zero. Like you're either off gear or you're on 500 tests. There was no like in between. That was like the minimum effective dose as per the forums back in the day. So you would be on your 500 tests, and then anything you stack on top goes on top of 500 tests. Like there's no lowering your test base if you're adding in estrogenic compounds on top. There's no in between of 0 to 500. It's straight up 500 tests, and then anything you stack goes on top of 500 tests, because you just need to have tests. Because if you don't have 500 tests, then the whole cycle just doesn't work. You know, backed by the logic back then. Your dick won't work, nothing will work if you don't have 500 tests, because you just need it. And don't fucking ask questions because we're veterans of the forum and you're a little piece of shit kid who doesn't know shit. So take your 500 test and shut the fuck up. Was kind of the thought process back then. It was funny because it wasn't that long ago that, like I'm in this position now where like to some people I'm considered, you know, like, yeah, high quality information, you know, even an expert by some people in certain things they talk about. But it wasn't that long ago that, you know, like I didn't know shit, and I was, you know, like a 19, 20-year-old kid just like trying to grill guys who I consider to be veterans in the community about like,
hey dude, like how do I fucking do this? Do I take my D-ball at this time or this time? What is the best bulking cycle?
How much do I do of this? Like all these fucking questions that like are honestly good questions if you're a newbie, but it was like back in the day, it's not like I could defer to some like high quality information that was, I don't know, like I learned the same way everyone else is learning, and getting to a point where you have a knowledge bank that is actually like valuable, it takes years. Like everyone starts somewhere, and I too was at a point where I just listened to fucking like bro forums and shit and just heard like, you need 500 tests, so use it. And I was like, okay, you want to fucking gain size? Throw D-ball with test. That's the best cycle. The best bulking cycle, test D-ball Deca. That was the thought process back then. Okay, I'll fucking do it. That was like the extent of the fucking thought process back then. So anyways, like I said, the cycle that I did, that the first one that was hugely problematic was test plus D-ball. So 500 mgs of test, because there's nothing, you can't use less than that, you know. And then D-ball, well, D-ball is only useful at like 20 to 30 milligrams was the thought process back then, which, you know, when you actually think about how much aromatization to estrogen you already have from your test, and then you have D-ball on top of that, creating a whole another kind of synthetic estrogen on top, what do you think the outcome is going to be? Especially when it is potentially a more problematic synthetic estrogen analog on top of it, stacking on top. So we have these two highly estrogenic compounds at dosages likely exceeding, like 20 to 30 was the intro dose too. Like I went up to maybe, I think on the cycle that it was actually problematic, I probably stayed at like 30 to 40, but I like, you know, people are going up to like 50 plus of this shit. And I'm pretty sure the cycle where I had the issues was about 30 to 40. And I largely had like some of the thought process in my head was like, okay, well the range of effective dose is like 20 to 50. So I should get as close to 50 as I can. It was like, instead of thinking minimum effective dose, I was thinking like maximum tolerable dose on my first cycle. So the outcome of that was the highest blood pressure I've ever had in my life. I was walking around. I don't even remember what it was. Maybe it was like fucking 160 over 120 or something fucked up. But I was literally walking around university. I would literally be sitting in lecture and then just spontaneously have a nosebleed in the middle of fucking class and have to like walk out, run to the fucking bathroom, let my nose bleed out, and then go back to class. And then I'd just be walking around. I'd have like 2 or 3 nosebleeds a day. And you can imagine when you actually get to the gym and you're lifting, you know, you're just like, say your fucking prayers before you get in the squat rack that you're not gonna like explode a fucking bloody nose all over the place. That is the kind of shit I was dealing with. And then above and beyond that, the D-ball back pumps, bro, fucking ruthless. I had to literally pull some exercises out of my program because I simply could not tolerate them with the D-ball back pumps. You would get like doing a bent over barbell row and like deadlifts, or even like squats and shit. It was getting to a point where like everything was causing back pumps. I'd literally do like a fucking bicep curl, like strict curl, and somehow I'd leave the gym and have like a minor back pump. Like it was fucked up. Granted, I'm sure my form was probably way shittier back then too, but still, I would remember sitting in the leg press even and being like, my fucking back hurts. Like it was such a fucking unnecessary stack to be using. So like basically the problem, as you can imagine, is when you're using 2 testosterone bases essentially at dosages exceeding what I needed even to fulfill that physiologic function to begin with, you're just leading to a fucking overabundance of shit. I was like so waterlogged, it was unbelievable. Like as you can imagine, the fucking blood pressure increase, the bloody noses, this is all signs that you're holding way too much water and you're way too fucking estrogenically burdened, and your diet sucks too. My diet was fucking trash back then. I used to do like dirty bulk shit where I just eat everything in sight, even if it was bad for me. And as you can imagine, when your diet and your electrolyte intake's all way fucking off, your water intake's way off, the compound selection's absolutely stupid, you end up in a situation like a bloated Michelin man and your fucking nose is bleeding all the time. And you get fucking ED too. So I would like randomly, sporadically get like brutal ED to the point I'd need like fucking 40 to 50 milligrams of Cialis to get it up. Like there were some cases where I would literally have a chick over and the 100 milligrams of Viagra I took didn't even work. So I'd like run upstairs and pop a Cialis. Like that. On top of the Viagra. It was fucking brutal, dude. So like managing your estrogen is super critical for being in the like not too low but not too high either, to the point where you have a good ratio of bioavailable free androgens relative to estrogens in the body, and you just feel on point in money, and you don't have these issues where you're ending up fucking popping 40 milligrams plus of Cialis just to like get through a shitty like 10 to 15 minute session. And you're panting and wheezing like a fucking out of shape goddamn dinosaur on top of the chick, because you're just like this fat, bloated, fucking disgusting piece of meat. So anyways, that was the D-ball test stack that I can think of that was really bad. And I was like, I'm probably never doing this again. I think after that, I actually might have done D-ball Deca tests too. And that probably led to the same outcome again. I'm 100% positive I at least one time did D-ball Deca test, and it was like even worse. So maybe that was the D-ball Deca test I'm remembering. And that's probably, you know, the Deca dick I'm actually remembering now that I think about it, where I had, and it's not Deca causing the Deca dick, by the way, is the combination of test with D-ball, with Deca, all on top of one another. Because you can imagine when you have a 500 milligram base, plus, I think it was like 400 Deca I was using, plus like 40 D-ball or something. Like, fuck, dude. I was just like a walking nosebleed with ED. Fucking brutal. So that was that, you know, cycle. And then, you know, one of the other ones that was really bad. I had that really bad leg shot, by the way. I did a video on this. It was like never inject your quads. And it's not saying that quads don't work. You know, you can obviously get away with it. It was just, I recommend you watch the video if you want to see my message from that. It was like the number one, I don't even remember what I said, but anyways, it was like showing this bad quad injection I had. It wasn't even an infection. It was just a random like bad luck thing that happened. So you could easily say that was one of my worst cycle experiences, 100%. But it wasn't necessarily a compound reaction. It was more so just like a freak accident that just happened for no reason, where I just had like internal bleeding in my leg. So there was no infection, no anything. It was just like a freak accident, but that was obviously a bad cycle experience. I think I was just on like TRT at the time though, or it might've been like TRT plus, maybe it was like test plus NPP. That was like one of my go-to like bulking cycles at the time. Might've been that, but like either way, it was like a very like mild fucking shot of like something that I've tolerated forever with the same clean gear like a million times over. And it wasn't, shouldn't have been problematic, but it was just like a freak shot that got fucked up. So that was a bad experience. It took a while to recover from, because I actually had to cut a little slit in my leg to drain all the blood out, because it was just way too painful sitting there with a fucking bloated leg to hell, where it was like hyperextended because it was so full with blood. So that was a bad experience, obviously. What else? One of the worst cycles was probably this one where I just decided I was going to do as minimal of effort in the gym as possible, and I'm just going to do fluff workouts, because it's kind of funny, because I see, there's arguments about like how hard you should train. Should you try and progressively overload with weight? Is it just about increasing volume and all this kind of shit? And like back in the day, I was like, you know what? I see these guys and like the IFBB pros just doing like fluff workouts on YouTube, and they're fucking huge. So I should just try that too. So I'm just going to do a giant blast phase and just try and get a good pump, and like not try and gain any like weight on my exercises at all. Like not try and add any sort of poundages whatsoever. I'm just going to get a pump and leave and do the absolute bare minimum with the exact same weight the entire cycle and do absolutely nothing. And I tried that, and I think that was like the highest I pushed my test and trend ever too. I literally just, for no fucking reason, I think I went up to like 750 test plus like 600 tren E or something like that. And I remember at the end of it too, notably, there was a certain amount left in the vial, and I was like, fuck it, I just want to get rid of it. So I like pulled out like 2 to 3 milliliters of test plus like 2 to 3 milliliters of tren, and I just like bombed it in like one giant shot, and just like fucking like, not front loaded, I guess, because it's not the start of the cycle, it was like the end of the cycle, but I like back loaded just like a fucking gram and a half of shit for like no reason. And I remember my hair got decimated that cycle. And I was so hyper paranoid that the relationship I was in at the time got fucking like, it was a disaster. Like I was so paranoid for no reason. And it just like totally fucked my mindset to the point where it was like, you cannot possibly perceive what is going on in any sort of accurate way and manage emotional stress properly whatsoever when you're on that high of a dose of tren, unless you are like, I don't know, like one of the, like I guess maybe like, 1 in 10 individuals might tolerate tren like super well, where they have like no mental issues whatsoever, and it only like elevates their mindset and like makes them more hyper confident and shit. I definitely wasn't one of those individuals. Like sometimes, like I remember when I got like super shredded on tren, I'd get like hyper confident, and I was like, I remember in my peak like PUA phase when I did a cutting phase on test, tren, and masteron, and man, like I looked fucking like grainy, dry. That was probably the leanest I ever was, and I was like peak pickup phase at the time, and I thought I was the shit. So that, I guess at that time, the tren elevated my confidence rather than like made me paranoid as fuck. But that's only like because my ducks were like all in a row at the time, I guess. Like once you get into a situation where there's any sort of chance of you construing something as like suboptimal, your brain goes to the worst possible outcome that it could possibly be. Like 100% like, this chick who I'm with who like says she loves me, like she fucking hates me. She's definitely cheating on me. Like fuck this bitch, It's like the worst thing you could possibly think of is 100% happening right now. And just like dumb shit, you think the world's out to get you. You're like, that guy's definitely fucking looking at me, and he's just like minding his own business. What else? I'm trying to think. There's got to be some other ones. There's a lot of cycles I did where they sort of led to my videos on the number one thing, the number one tip you should know before you use steroids or something like that. That was like one of my most viewed videos actually. And it's very good tips in there, but it's basically elaborating on not wasting your blasts. And the reason being is because of my experience in the past with some of the shit like high dose test and tren, where I just did like fluff and puff bullshit stuff where I like wasted organ stress and didn't even make gains at the time really, because I was just wasting the fucking cycle. So like I did have productive cycles too, but there was a lot where I was like, I can just do this infinite amount of time. So like maybe I'll just experiment and just try and be like a lazy fuck. And it doesn't work out too well. And then you soon realize that actually you have a lifespan on your sawzall ears, and you cannot sauce yourself into oblivion for perpetually for your whole life. In fact, you are probably going to get to a point where something is going to make you stop doing it, and you're going to wish those cycles where you did like dumb shit, you actually took 100% seriously, and your diet was 100% on point, your training was 100% on point, your sleep was 100% on point, and you weren't a fucking dumb fuck. So I'm trying to think of anything else off the top of my head. This video is pushing 17 minutes at this point, so I might cut it off. But yeah, those are just like those are probably the most notable dumb cycles. I remember I took D-ball once when I was, and again, like my relationship with D-ball over the years was like so love-hate, because this shit like hyperinflates you and makes you look so jacked within like 2 weeks, where it's like, is one of the few steroids where it's like within like a week and a half, people are like, what the fuck are you on? And it's so obvious that you're on something, and it just makes you look, especially if you're lean, it makes you look insane. But it is the manifestation of side effects essentially visually showing themselves because of your use of the compound. Like, I never could stick to an intelligent regimen with D-ball. I always did like 30 milligrams plus. I could never like try out like 10 or 20 and like see what it was like. Instead, I always went to like the dose that would give me nosebleeds, because I wanted that, you know, the maximum effect from it, where I would just get like hyperinflated with water, and I thought it was like good weight, when in reality it was just temporary fucking shitty fluff weight that was spiking my blood pressure up and making me think I was jacked, when it was just temporary bullshit weight. And I'd be like literally standing there bouncing. I'd be like in the middle of like fucking tossing dudes out or letting people in or like talking to people and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh shit. And I have to like go fucking leave in the middle of my job and run to the bathroom and like clean out my fucking nose, because I just start bleeding on the spot. I remember like sitting there at the club, and I'd be like, fuck, like, hope I don't get a nosebleed tonight. That's like the worst thing you could do when you're like, your job is literally to like make sure people like toss people out that are like starting shit and stuff like that. So I think I stopped it after that, because I was like, actually, that was like the time I was starting to like realize how dumb some of the shit I was doing was like around that time with the bouncing stuff. So I think right when I noticed the bloody noses and the blood pressure, I was like, okay, that's the last time I'm ever running this shit. And that was the last time I touched D-ball many years ago at this point. So anyways, that's probably it. You know, like I have a lot of other stories, but I think those were like the most notable ones, to be honest. I have some really good fucking Deca dick stories probably. I have some other good stories about shit, and a lot of like short temper shit, and a lot of stuff that you probably is less notable. I don't know. But anyways, takeaway from that, you know, there's obviously takeaways from that, and you know, we all start somewhere. Our knowledge bank all starts at zero, and we learn from scratch. So don't feel like, you know, overwhelmed even when you see like my content or other people's content on this stuff, because like I literally started out as that guy who took like fucking 500 tests and like 40 D-ball on a cycle and thought it was a good cycle and just like fucked myself up. So yeah, anyways, I did a video earlier about like worst cycle experience. If you didn't drop a comment down there and you have a funny story or a notable experience that is a learning opportunity, you know, drop it in the comments down below. That helps the algorithm, and it's gonna be much appreciated by anyone who is you know, gauging their you know, the risks of shit, or trying to decide like one way or the other to do something. Any reference points are probably much appreciated by anyone in the community who follows our stuff. So drop it down there if you don't mind. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My TRT clinic, Gorilla Mind, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas that I design myself from scratch. My recommended lab test panels, my recommended diet model for newbies who don't really know how to get in their macro and micronutrients simultaneously. It is one of the most neglected aspects of good diet practices that I see, is guys who have no idea how to hit their micronutrient allotments. So just like a newbie friendly diet that is like idiot proof, that is perfect for gaining muscle as well as hitting micros, and is a great starting point to learn how to build your diet off of as a foundation, not necessarily as like the optimal thing for you personally, but as a foundation for nutritional practices moving forward. I highly recommend you check out the ebook. As far as the diet model, I would recommend if you are like new to this, or you just like want, you know, something just handed to you on a silver platter of like what I think is good. And anything else I'm associated with, all in the video description below. So thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.